Hello, Carol Taylor-Kearney here at Powell Arts, and I am with the elegant Johanne Lamarche, and she is going to tell us about her artwork that will be in our upcoming show.
Thank you for having me, Carol and Caroline. I'm really thrilled to be here.
We're glad to have you.
Thank you. I really didn't think I'd participate in this show because of the theme being portrait. And I am generally not an artist that actually paints portraits. So I thought, or objects, and I really was going to bag out of this show. And I forced myself to get out of my comfort zone and thought about what I could create for the show. I had recently had this pin that I made, admired by a friend, and I never cease to get comments when I wear this particular pin.
I can see why.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And I thought, what if I took the concept of that pin and magnified it into a work of art? And this is how this work of art was born. So I basically took the concept of my pin and put it on MDF board that I painted. And then I started building the heart. And because the show was themed in February, I thought a heart would work really well.
Yeah.
And so I started building it. This is a heart with a lot of resilience. It's a heart that has a lot of symbolism built into it. And it's a lot more than meets the eye. And I'd like to talk about those themes that I introduced in the piece.
Please do.
Yeah. This is a button that was given to me from a vintage store in Toronto that I really love because of its organic qualities. And of course, it's a black button. And most of the work I do with these button pins are pretty much pearls and white buttons.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought this was really the symbol of a big period of loss in one's life, a period of extreme sadness or hardship in one's life. And I put it in a very central position in the heart because we've all had heartbreak in our lives. And, this is not just a pretty heart. It has a lot of symbolism. And by putting something so big and black in there, I felt I needed to balance that.
Mm-hmm.
So I did put other black items, buttons, and jewels within the heart to sort of balance it out. Also, we all have periods of extreme love, extreme happiness in our lives, in our hearts. So I introduced some vintage jewelry to symbolize a burst of happiness.
Yeah, and some sparkle,
joy.
yeah.
And I love
The
that
sparkle.
it's right near the heartache.
Right, because that's what life is.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of ups and downs. And overall, hopefully you have a balance of both experiences in your
and your heart
and
builds
in your
around
life.
it too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and keeps growing.
And I like the way you recognize the sparkle, Carol, because absolutely there's sparkle elements throughout.
Mm-hmm.
And that is really to symbolize, joys, moments of really great happiness. And so I have that happening pretty much throughout the whole heart. So little bits of sparkle. And that really makes the piece come alive when it has some light onto it. And some of that is from buttons, some of it is from vintage jewelry. This was an earring from the 1940s, a clip-on earring. That was my husband's grandmother's earring. And a lot of these buttons are actually vintage or antique, and they were from my husband's great-grandmother's collection of buttons. And she immigrated to the United States in 1907.
Oh, that's awesome.
So some of these buttons are really, really old.
They're vintage and antique.
Absolutely.
Vintage and antique.
And one in particular that I really loved, and it's the last one I have, is this couple over here. And they're dressed in really old-fashioned clothing.
Yeah.
And I thought that could be a symbolism. And of course, they'd be on the left-hand side of the heart.
Yeah.
So it'd be the heart, the love that comes from your ancestors, from your parents, your grandparents, and people that have had an influence in your past. So they've been brought in here. I also have a little heart within a heart that's made out of rhinestones. That was part of a vintage piece of jewelry as well. And that would be, you could make it whatever it symbolizes for you. but maybe the love that you hold for a really special person within your heart. And I have that represented there. I also have a lot of pearls. I love pearls.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I have some broken necklaces and seeded pearls that have filled in throughout the heart. And that, for me, is also a lot of the disappointments of life, a lot of the hurts that we have, but in maybe a minor scale. And they're throughout the heart. But what's also very representative here is that the majority of this heart is kept together with really ordinary buttons.
I was going to
And
ask you
the
about that.
scaffolding is actually really ordinary buttons, everyday shirt buttons. And I felt that that was important to show that, with all the ups and downs of life, really we're held together by ordinary experiences and being just in the present ordinary
Right.
Well, and
moments.
so many of them are different. They're similar in color and scale, but they are very different in material, and they all hover around grays and whites and things like that, of the ordinary buttons.
Yes.
But they are all unique in a way that, like, the mundane moments of our life.
Some are matte, some are shiny.
Yeah, and they
some
are, but
have
also
white
they
shimmer.
are all different.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
just that they are more ordinary.
They are more ordinary, and we're all made up of ordinary.
Yeah.
I also
And
like
it's
this.
a privilege to have those burst moments in life. And it's a reality that we all have hardship, disappointments, and heartache.
Yeah.
So I felt like I was trying to show all of that in the heart. I can't say that the burgundy ones have too much symbolism, except I was trying to balance that really special button that is up here in the upper left.
Yeah.
Just think of them as corpuscles.
Yes. And then there's a couple of other special buttons in there that I introduced, and I always love these really big ship buttons that would probably on some nautical kind of theme fit.
Well,
And I put a few of those in there, but I also found this button that I remember from my childhood, a similar button. And to me, that looked a bit like a compass marking.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought, I'm going to put that beside the ship button because we all are guided through life, through our upbringing and the principles that we've been shown, but the love of the people around us. And I felt like that was showing that we're all guided and that somebody has, taken us through life with their guidance. And so I had thought I'd give this heart a French name. I'm French Canadian by culture, and I wanted to call it mon cœur, and that's like my heart. And my very American husband said, the average American just wouldn't know what that means. So maybe you should think of a title that's a little more American-like. And I thought, well, mon cœur sounds so wonderful. But I did take his advice, and right away it came to mind that how do I love thee? And both of us burst out, let me count the ways.
Right.
After the famous Elizabeth Barrett Browning poem.
See, you did it.
I did it. And my husband said, that's it. Let me count the ways, because it's also a double entendre in that how many buttons came together to create the composition.
I love how you curated, like the way that you curate so thoughtfully and then put it to get, like, assemble it. It is the care that you should take with your heart in the way that you assemble things. And I really appreciate that about this piece. Is beautiful, but also the meaning is, the subtext and the meaning is very nice.
Thank you. Thank you. And for me, this is the heart that shows that the heart is resilient. We go through all kinds of experiences in life. It's what makes us human.
Yeah.
And what makes us beautiful and sensitive. And so I felt like I really wanted to bring all the experiences of one's heart in life together in this piece of art.
I'm going to take it one step further because I know some of your other work, and we've shown some here at Powell Art, and there will be another piece, also very beautiful, by Johanne, and it's goes to your way of being creative. That some people do all this planning and it has to be very specific, and other people like let life come into it, and then it's almost as though the experience grows through it. How do you feel that like you come up with your best creative ideas? Because this is not, people know hearts. And I think it's funny how you can even say, I remember being in grammar school, one of the ways, in kindergarten they had you learn how to count was to count buttons.
Yes.
And so it has all these connections, and you've told us a rich variety. So when you are making things, how do you come up with how you go through that process?
Well, as an artist, I'm mostly an abstract artist as I've gotten older.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a lot more less planned, a lot more spontaneous, a lot more emotional in how much emotion you put in the creation of art. So I would say that I'm a lot more the latter. And of course, my background in science and surgery was always to be extremely planned and meticulous.
Yeah.
And detail
Meticulous is such a
orientated.
good word for you.
And I've been trying to break away from that kind of professional training that defined me for many years. So my art practice has really evolved to be a lot more spontaneous. And I think my essence is that I'm a creative person that sees outside of the box.
Mm-hmm.
And when I created this, I had no preconceived notion. I had a time crunch as well. When the theme came out, I was about to leave for a month of travel. So I only had a few days to come up with a creation. And I had the frame, and it's a beautiful, beautiful frame. And I thought, it's the perfect shape for a heart.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started designing a heart. But again, I introduced all those themes randomly and as I developed it.
Yeah. And I think that like what's nice about this is like to your point, Carol, like it melds these two ends of the spectrum, because at the same time you can tell us about each of the objects and it's very meticulous and well thought out. It's also comes together in kind of
It's very compositional.
It's very compositional, but it's very like you also had to use intuitive and feel to get to there, which I think is what you were getting at.
Yes.
And so it's a nice mix of both, like of two parts of your nature coming together in such a beautifully executed. It has a great feel to it. It feels good looking at it. It feels good approaching it, the stories behind it.
Everybody also is left with room to come up to it and put their own stories into it.
Yes.
Because I look at the pearls, and of course, I think of my wedding pearls. Yes. I look at some of the buttons. I remember my grandmother having an earring like that. So as I look at these little tufts, and it's almost like the top of a little cupcake, which I would love.
I can see that.
Everyone can come to it and find their own treasures. And yet you've given us such a rich history of the piece that's an enjoyment too.
And I think that that's one of the things that like I in particular, and I think a lot of people like about art is there's always the story of the artist and that moment of meaning for them.
Yes.
But then the piece of art ends up becoming informed by your experience too.
Yes.
Just like your heart does. So this is even more perfect.
And I think that's what I love about abstract art creation is that the person viewing it has to finish and complete the piece of art.
Yeah.
And as much as this looks like a heart, tastes like a heart, looks like a heart, smells like a heart, no one would doubt that it's a heart. I feel that you can still come up to it and see, knowing that I hid all kinds of meaning into it, you could definitely bring your own story to the piece.
Yeah.
And I wanted to finish by saying I grew up with a mom who was a seamstress, and she was very creative, and buttons were always something that I was around, but it was always the finishing touch in any of her creations, and I feel like this is a tribute to her.
Oh, that's lovely. That is lovely. And that is a perfect place to finish up. Although I want to say that we have another piece by Joanna, as well.
Joanne, you're concentrating too much on the H.
Well, I'm sorry. So let's put this here. And as well as some handmade cards that are also very lovely. So come to see this at Powell Arts from when?
January 19th through March 12th.
Yay!
We did it. I'm sorry.
So,
Thank you.
come to portray it. Thank you very much.